I've paid thousands of dollars in courses to learn what you're basically teaching on your podcast for free. What you're putting out there is so valuable. So, I just really want to acknowledge you, and I definitely send everyone to your podcast.
You were virtually one of the first mentors that I looked up to and started following. You're always one step ahead of the game. So I just wanted to give you kudos and props for that, because lots of people are watching, lots of people are learning from it.
Tucker and the whole TTM crew, Dan and Chris, thanks so much for your support. I love what you guys do, and a huge, huge fan. Having this support's huge. So I'm grateful for that.
What's up, everybody out there in listener land? This is episode 263 of the Real Dealz podcast, and as always, I am your host, Tucker Merrihew. I want to thank you guys for joining me for another episode. I got another solo show this week. I've got another hot topic, one that's making its way around the real estate forums, the Facebook groups, and everywhere else. There's publications that talk about real estate. So I've got a hot show with a hot topic for you. And it's just going to be you, me, and your earballs. And we're going to talk about it. Or at least I'm going to talk about it. You're going to listen, and you'll probably think about what you think about it. But before I get into that, make sure you check out last week's show. It was titled 3 Feet from Gold, and apparently a lot of you guys really enjoyed that show. Had a bunch of people reach out to me. I think probably because there was a lot of real life examples I kind of went through in terms of challenges that I've faced personally in order to kind of persevere to eventually achieve success, or still trying to achieve success in certain areas. So I think it's a real life examples that are relatable, and ultimately I think you guys enjoyed it. Well, I know you guys enjoyed it, so I'll try and do more shows like that as we move forward because they seem to be a hit. But again, this week, I don't want to dive too far into a rabbit hole, but this week's show is going to be all about, will the iBuyers put us out of business? And I'm also going to go over some recent numbers. Zillow released their earnings and their losses for Q1 of 2019 for their iBuyer program. There's a variety of other iBuyer programs that are out there now as well. And the reality is that we're in a changing market. Our business will forever change. And I don't know who's going to be standing at the end of all this when the market shifts. But the reality is that it's going to be a different world than it was a few years ago. That's no doubt. And we'll kind of dive into what I think is going to happen, and ultimately what the numbers are, because there's some big losses. And we'll talk about whether or not you should be concerned about that, or Zillow should be concerned about that, or not. So that's going to be this week's show. Now, before we get into all of that, of course, I've got our housekeeping items. Number one is our Driving for Dollars app. For those of you guys that are using it, we sent out some emails this week to everybody in our user base, which is a lot of you, letting you know that our tiered pricing is now in effect. So we basically have multiple tiers. The cheapest tier is $20 a month. And with that, you can skip trace up to 100 properties and create a list with that and get all the information that you need in order to, do all of your marketing, layered marketing, I should say, via all the skip trace information that's needed in order to execute that. So cheapest plan is only $20 a month. There's no reason not to have it. You can have it on the fly while you're driving around, you're checking out a project. You open the app, you drop a pin, and you pull the information on the house, who owns it, what their phone number is, email, IP address, all kinds of stuff. And you can call them on the fly. In fact, my man Corey Thompson actually sent a video to me this week of him doing it on the fly, actually calling people as he's driving around neighborhoods. So that's what it's meant for, folks. Be active, be proactive, and use the information and the technology that you have at your fingertips for only $20 a month to be able to get in front of sellers, get them on the phone, talk to them, and see if there's any chance of potentially buying their property. So go download it if you have not already. There's a 5-property free trial. And like I said, the cheapest tier is only $20 a month, so you can't go wrong there. Now, the other thing I want to mention is our REI Deal Generator program, the high-end coaching/mentoring program that I'm doing with Justin Silverio. We're going to be opening up another round for people that want to join sometime in June. So we'll have some official announcements coming in within the next week, but I wanted to kind of trickle that out there. So if some of you guys thought about joining in previous rounds and maybe timing or just money wasn't right at that point, you've got another chance to jump in. It's a fantastic program. It's really an awesome program for us because we work so closely with people as well to kind of build their business and deploy their marketing, go through leads, and really take them to the other side of the hump in this business in terms of building out a marketing machine, getting consistent lead flow, and ultimately getting consistent deal flow. So reach out to us if you're interested in that. There'll be a link in the show notes. And like I said, we'll be kicking off a new round come the end of June. So those are the housekeeping items that I want to talk about. Before we get into the world of iBuyers, give you a quick glimpse into what's going on with myself and TTM over the course of the past week. Number one is I had Ryan from Roar. If you guys have not already listened to the episode that I did on Roar, which is basically our ringless voicemail and text message provider, it's an awesome platform. We use it every single day in our own business. Go check it out. There's also be a link in the show notes page where you guys can get a discount by signing up via that link. But go listen to that episode that I recorded with Ryan. But the point is that Ryan actually flew up here to Portland. We met yesterday morning, and for about 3 hours, we hashed out something really cool that we're going to try and put together for this business. It's never been done. We are putting together a way to bring in on-demand leads and bring them into this business. And we'll keep you posted on that, but it could be a really, really cool thing and something that's never been done, especially for this business. And if that's the case, you have permission to market to these people any way that you want to. And on top of that, they actually want to sell their house for cash. So stay tuned. We got some really cool stuff going on with that. And then we also got a really cool new technology that I figured out that I'll talk about next week that has to do with RMLS lockboxes. So stay tuned for that. Now, a couple other things I want to mention. Number one is we looked at probably the most disgusting house that we've seen definitely this year, probably in the past 2 years this week. I posted a picture of it in our Deal Finders Academy forum on Facebook, and it was just the most disgusting house. I could not believe that this guy lived in it. He was pretty forthright about the fact that he just had drank and smoked himself to almost death over the last 2 decades, but it was ill. It was really, really disgusting. And we're walking through the house, we're looking at it, and the guy's telling me that, it only needs about 50 grand worth of work. Mind you, the house is sloping from front to back as well. There's no foundation along the back wall, so they framed it all crooked, and it's sloping pretty heavily. So basically, the whole house needs gutted. It's got asbestos siding. All of the stairs up to it are rotted. It's right on a busy road. There's no driveway. There's limited parking. There's no backyard, really. It's just it was a really obscure, crappy piece of property. And on top of that, the guy was like, for 50 grand, you could get this place cleaned up and nice. And I was like, no, I think this needs probably 120 grand to get this place cleaned up. And anyway, we ended up having some friction because he didn't agree with my renovation numbers. But long story short, I actually got an email last night from our competition who put this under contract and is now blasting it out to the world of, lesser sophisticated buyers, saying that, it's only a $50,000 remodel, and it's a cheaper price. So I don't know, maybe they'll get some interest or not. But the reason why I'm telling you this story is because it happens to us here as well, where you're going up against competition that basically tells people what they want to hear, right, in order to get a deal inked. And, ultimately what happens is they ink the deal, and then they try and float it out to their buyers list, and they can't sell it, and then they go back to them, and they basically say that they need to get a price reduction for whatever, that usually is pretty sizable. This is very likely going to be one of those situations. And so the point is that we're kind of in this time where it's super competitive, right? And sometimes you have to tell sellers what they want to hear before you can tell them what they need to hear. Now, in this case, I went with telling them what they needed to hear right off because I really didn't want to buy this house. It was it was on a 2,400 square foot lot on a busy road with no driveway, no parking. Everything was shit about the house. So I really didn't care all that much. But our competition came in, told them what they wanted to hear, and ultimately ended up putting under contract. Now they're floating it out to everybody out there that may be interested in it or may not. And ultimately they're going to end up having to go back and tell them that they need a big price reduction, is my guess, and then it may crash and burn, or they may actually reduce price down to what it should sell for, which that's kind of the dirty part of this game. That's kind of what a lot of people do right now in order to get it under contract and eventually chisel people down on price. And then if you're actually trying to do good business and tell people what legitimately it's going to cost to renovate it on the front end, they're just not ready to hear it. And so that's just one of those things that I want to kind of put out there. Sometimes you got to tell people what they want to hear before you can tell them what they need to hear. And in this case, we didn't do it because this is such a stupid property. It really didn't matter to me. But it's just the game that we have to play, and it's the world that we're in right now. So figured I'd tell you guys that story, and you can take what you want from it. Now, on a more positive note, we're negotiating on 2 other houses right now in an A-plus area, part of Lake Oswego, that we're looking at. One is a bigger ranch. The other is a little bit of a more choppy ranch. And so one's a little bit bigger rehab. The other one could be bought and sold. And so we're kind of going back and forth on that. But the whole reason that these people called us is because we've been marketing to them for probably 2 years now. And we sent some specialty marketing pieces to them. And then we've continued to market them. And they were on our Driving for Dollars list that we created a long time ago. But timing was right. And because timing was right, now they reached out to us. And now we've got the opportunity to buy these houses before anybody else knows they're for sale. So that just kind of goes to show that, when you try and, put metrics to everything in terms of response rate, deal rate, this and that, it's hard to do that when you're talking about, people that have yet to decide that they want to sell, right? Timing is always this big X factor. When is somebody going to want to sell? And so if you try and put a metric against a list and say, I've got X response rate and X contracts and deal rates from running 2 campaigns to it, I mean, you can do that, but at the end of the day, if they're good properties that should be bought by investors, you should continue to market these people on an ongoing basis. You don't have to market them every month, but maybe every quarter, because eventually a lot of these people, timing is going to line up and they're going to want to sell. And when they do, you want them to give you first crack. And that's basically what happened with these 2 houses. So anyway, I tell you that story because I don't want you guys to stop marketing, because eventually everybody sells, at some point. And you want to be top of mind when that's the case. Now, the last thing that I'll mention is we've actually got another renovation project that we'll be putting on the market here in about a week. And this was one that we actually had to level out the floors. We re-sided it, put new windows in, some new flooring. But we banged it out pretty quick. We're probably like 5 weeks in, I think, and we'll be done with this thing. We're going to put it back on the market, and it should have a nice 6-figure profit attached to it for what ended up being a pretty quick rehab, all things considered. And those are the best kind. So hopefully we can find a lot more of those this year, because fat profits with limited work and quick turn pretty much equals the ideal type of deal in this business. And they're not, all that easy to find these days. That's for sure, especially in the better parts of town and especially in Portland. But we're kind of on a run here of back-to-back deals that have been like that. So we're working hard to try and find another one, but we're excited to get this one on the market. The last one we put on the market had multiple offers in 24 hours. I think this one will be about the same. So anyway, I'll keep you posted. If you're not friends with me on Facebook, make sure you send me a friend request, and I always post all the finished pictures of our projects on there, and you can take a look at them and see what you think, since we put a lot of effort into our design and really just a lot of effort into renovating our houses. So that's pretty much what's going on with me and TTM over the course of the past week. So without further ado, let's get into the main topic.
All right, Real Dealz podcast listeners, I want to talk quickly about our show's sponsor, Iron Bridge Lending. If you guys have not reached out to Iron Bridge already to talk to them about funding some of your upcoming flip projects, I highly encourage you to do so. I've known the owner of Iron Bridge for a very long time. I've personally borrowed millions of dollars from them over the years to do a number of different projects, and I can say without a doubt, they are the best hard money lending company I have ever come across, and that is the reason why they are the sole sponsor of this show. I've had a lot of other companies reach out to me and want to sponsor this show, but I just won't do it. I feel like I need to be genuine in who we have sponsoring the show, and it needs to be somebody that I've personally done a ton of business with. So I personally vouch for their ability to be the best, hands down, in the world of hard money lending. You won't find better programs, you won't find better terms, and they're lending or will be lending in over 20 states. So chances are, if you're hearing this in whatever state you're in, it's definitely worth it to check out their website, reach out to them, see if they're lending in your state, and if they are, I would absolutely encourage you to do business with them. Another very cool thing to note is that they have a program for most rehabs where you can actually borrow up to 90% of the purchase price. Now, this is given the fact that you are actually buying a deal, which if you're listening to the show, that means you probably are. But if you have an actual deal on the table, they'll fund up to 90% of your purchase price, and they'll even give you rehab funds on top of that, which means that it only takes 10% down to get into a project, which is unbelievable in the hard money world. So do yourself a favor, reach out to Iron Bridge Lending, have a conversation with them, see if they're a good fit for you and for your next project. I can guarantee you that you'll be happy that you did.
All right, guys, time to talk main topic. And this week's main topic is, will the iBuyers put us out of business? Now, I've seen a lot of stuff going around. I've read a lot this week. And I've read everybody's comments too, because there was a lot of posting of articles that had to do with Zillow, because since they are a publicly traded company, they have to report their numbers on a quarterly basis. And so they reported their numbers this past week for all of their home buying activity for Q1 of 2019, which I'll go through here because I think it's important to understand these numbers and kind of look at them, through a couple different lenses. But more importantly, we're in a world now where Zillow is basically saying, look, we want the majority of our business to be buying and selling real estate. That's what they want. And so they're striving to get there. Now, they're on the front edge of it, and they're kind of learning this business. They're trying to figure it out. And ultimately, they're trying to turn houses into like a car, right? You can take your car, you can trade it in and get cash for it right away and apply it towards a new car, or you can just sell it straight to the dealership. When you do that, you're taking a discount for it, but the simplicity of it causes you to say, you know what, it's just worth it to do it. So on a plus note, that's basically what they're doing in real estate, and that's to some extent what we've been doing for a long time. Now, for us, and especially me personally, we look for properties that need work, places where we can add value to widen our margin. Now, Zillow and those other type of, iBuyers aren't necessarily looking for the same type of product, and I'll dive into that here in a little more and how we can kind of combat this and how we can stay in business moving forward. But ideally, they're looking for kind of a quicker turn type project where they can basically, just like a car lot, they can buy a car that's in decent shape, they can take it in, give you cash for it, that's a discount, they can clean it up, spiff it up, put it on the lot, sell it quickly, right? That's what they're trying to do, and they're trying to create a thin margin and do volume. And so that's essentially the iBuyer model, right? And the other thing is that they've got just an ass ton of money that they're funding these operations with. So it's hard to compete against that in terms of price if you're going after a house that needs minimal work. Like, we as investors generally are not going to be able to offer anywhere near what they can offer, because they are just trying to crank volume. They got to put money to work, and they're just trying to feed a Titanic, right? Where we're trying to generate as much revenue and profit as possible, they're just trying to generate as many houses as possible, especially right now. So what I want to do is go through the numbers here real quick. So Zillow sold 414 homes in Q1 of 2019. Over all of the markets that they're in right now. And they're looking to expand to multiple different markets throughout the remainder of this year, above and beyond what they're already in. But they sold 414 homes. They generated $128.5 million in revenue from those 414 homes, which basically you divide the 128.5 by 414 homes, and you get the average sale price of the home. Now, with $128 million in revenue, they had $173 million in costs, which, that's a bigger number, right? It's a lot bigger number. And so basically what that creates is a $45 million loss, approximately, or $109,000 per house. Now, you look at that on the surface and you go, holy hell, that seems like a absolutely terrible business model. They're losing $109,000 per house. Now, I look at it and I go, yeah, they're definitely not making money, but they're also laying the tracks. They're building their brand. They're trying to build out this side of the business that wasn't built out before. So they're really not concerned, I don't think, with the fact that it doesn't make money at this point. Now, will it make money at some point? I don't know. That's up for debate for sure. But basically, they lost an ass ton of money in Q1 of this year. I think as they continue to grow and they continue to brand this program, they're going to lose money throughout this entire year. But here's the thing. We're in this era now where publicly traded companies don't have to make money. So it's kind of a strange time, right? Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, all these companies that don't really make money, and some of them lose a ton of money, have these giant valuations. And so Zillow is no exception when it comes to this type of or this part of their revenue. And so it's hard to compete with that because the market says, oh, well, it's okay that they're losing money because eventually they project that they're going to make money. And, I've got two thoughts on this. Number one is, they're losing money, which is what it is. But number two is, eventually they may make money, but the challenge is going to be when the market slows, how these programs continue to work, right? How are they going to handle a slowing market, and how are they going to adjust their buy prices? And so my guess is that they will continue these programs. There won't be as many of these companies out there that are doing it. I just don't see how it's possible. But they're going to adjust, and they're going to have to buy much more conservatively. And so they're really going to have to know which markets are dropping, which markets are flatlining, and kind of understand that really, really well, which if it's Zillow, they do because they're tracking so much data that they probably know that. But right now, with the market being hot, all they're doing is just buying market share, right? I mean, it's if you want to do a gazillion projects, all you got to do is pay more than the next guy. And so that's all they're doing. And now they're also spending a ton of money on marketing and advertising, technology, all these things, which, we've been looking at very carefully because we feel like there's ways that they could dramatically improve that. But they're laying tracks right now. They're trying to figure this game out. They're building out the business, and they're playing with house money because they're a publicly traded company. So nobody really cares that they're losing money, and they've got infinite amounts of money to lose and continue the program. So I don't think that it's going to cause them to go out of business. They're going to close up shop or anything like that. They're gathering data. They're laying the tracks, and they got infinite amounts of money that they can basically go spend on this program right now in hopes that someday it makes money, and someday it makes money is good enough for the street. And if it's good enough for the street, it's good enough for them, and keeps their shareholders at least somewhat happy. Now, Kramer, I read an article, CNBC, Crazy Kramer guy, he thinks it's a terrible idea that they got into the house buying game. So I don't know. We'll see. He's, somewhat of a smart guy, I guess. We'll see if his prediction is correct or not. I don't think their prediction of making as much money as they think they're going to make on this side of the business will ever come to fruition, because by the time that they say they're supposed to be making that much money, the market is going to likely have softened quite a bit, and that's going to throw a whole new monkey wrench into this whole thing. So we'll see what that entails as we get a little farther down the road. I just don't think their predictions are ever going to come to fruition. But more importantly, what can we do in the meantime to beat them, right? Because they're basically going out there, they're paying more than everybody else because they're buying market share. So what do? Well, number one is we figure out what it is they're buying. And most of the time they're buying stuff that's not that old, doesn't need that much work, definitely doesn't need add-ons or anything like that, because if they buy those things, those are longer-term projects. They require more management, they require more know-how, they require more finesse, and they just don't have the ability to do that at scale. And since they don't have the ability to do that at scale, that's what they're not buying. So they're buying the stuff that literally is like the car lot analogy. They can buy a car that's relatively clean at a cheap, take it through their detail shop, clean it up, maybe throw some rims on it, put it back out on the lot, and make a small margin. That's what they're trying to do with the houses as well. So we as investors, we're not going to win if we're competing against the same house that's like a 90s built, that's got brass, 90s brass fixtures and hardware, and, it's got a little bit of carpet that's worn out. Maybe it's got some pergo floors that can be replaced. Just some light stuff that can be done to kind of spruce the house up. We're probably not going to win if we're bidding against them on something like that. But what we can win on is the stuff they don't buy. So what I would suggest you do is, if you've got an Open Door or a Zillow in your market that's really hitting people hard, find out what they don't buy and go after that stuff. Now, that's not to say you can't buy the stuff that they go after too, because they're not going to get in front of everybody, but they're definitely not going to buy stuff that's older, that needs more work, that's, just basically outside of their box. So really figure out what that is, and then from there, you can determine where you're going to compete with them and where you're not. And ultimately, moving down the road, there's going to be a lot of areas, especially within single-family houses, where we're not going to overlap and compete with them. And so know where that is and go after that if they're in your market heavy. Now, on a plus note, overall, and this has been something we've experienced pretty heavily, when we go meet with people these days, the whole idea that there's iBuyers out there, that there's people out there that are buying houses, on a corporate level, cash offers, it's really legitimized our business. One of the houses that I talked about in the intro that we're talking to these people about buying, they understand what this business is now because of the fact that there's Zillow Instant Offers, there's Open Door, Keller Williams is getting into it, there's OfferPad, there's all these things, right? So since they understand it, it's kind of like, they're like, oh, yeah, okay, I can sell my house quickly and I sell it for a discount versus hiring a realtor and taking longer and having to do repairs and clean it up. Like, they understand that this part of the business exists where previously people just couldn't wrap their head around it. So now it's kind of like the car lot. They understand, just like most people do, they can take their car to the car lot, sell it at a discount, or they can try and sell it themselves for a little bit more money, and it may be a little bit more of a pain in the ass. So people just identify the fact that this is a legitimate business, and we provide a legitimate service. And so I think that's the positive to it. And so the other positive, of course, on our end is figure out what they buy and go after the stuff that they absolutely don't buy, and just expect if you're going to compete head-to-head with them on a newer product that needs very little stuff, it's just going to be hard to buy that product. It really is. And, on the other side, if you do get one that they haven't gotten in front of, I know people that have actually sold to them because they'll pay way more than we will as investors. So there is that side of it too. So anyway, bottom line is, they're losing a ton of money, Zillow is right now, but I don't think they care. And at the end of the day, they got a ton of money to lose and a ton of money to burn. And in this era of tech companies not actually having to make money to still have big valuations and have their stock price stay high, it really doesn't matter. So we got to figure out how to navigate around this and really use the fact that they're legitimizing the business as a positive, and go after the stuff that they're not going to buy if they have a heavy presence in our market. So that's pretty much this week's show. Before I leave you guys, I do have a closing success quote, and I saw this online, and I wanted to say it here on the show because I thought it was a great quote. And the quote it was actually from another podcast, but an individual that I know on Facebook posted it. The quote is, "You will either step forward into growth or you will step backward into safety." I like that, right? It's a pretty good quote. So anyway, that's my thoughts on the iBuyer program for this week. I'll see you all on the next one.